Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you this afternoon?
I feel like reminiscing today. How do you feel about that?
That would work for me. That would work for me. We are in lieu of a guest today. Lance and I have decided that we are going to share old Boston Brass war stories, which some of them are quite funny. And we were going to just wing it, and then we realized that we really needed to vet them because half of the ones we thought of are not really not acceptable to be put into a microphone and out into the internet at large. So, but we got a good list here of what we started figuring out was that the things that we find the funniest are just all of the things that went wrong. So, that's kind of where we're at. Is the failures are the best part. So, Lance, why don't you talk to the beautiful people and also the not as beautiful people about Patreon?
I would like to speak to all of you beautiful and less than beautiful people about Patreon. Patreon is a way for you to help us offset the cost of putting on this show. And it's quick and easy to do. You can sign up by going to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies. Patreon is spelled Patreon, and it is a way for you to contribute as little as $1 to each episode. And actually what will happen is if you sign up, you're actually going to get the file for the podcast about 12 hours early. So I don't know if I don't know how many of you are like on bated breath waiting, but if you are, that's a way for you to get it a day early. But it's it'll end up being about $26 a year for you. You can limit it even actually if you want to. I'm not paying more than 18. Okay, that's fine. We'll take your 18, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yes, we would.
Just head over there and check that out. We've promised having some special Patreon events, and I've dropped the ball on that, so you can be mad at me. But kicking up this fall, we're going to have a whole bunch of community building things with our Patreon fans and patrons, and so thank you to the existing patrons. We really, really appreciate it, and it's making it a lot easier for us to continue doing what we're doing. And if you're thinking about doing it, we'd like to encourage you to, if you contribute at the $1,000 level, Andrew, what do you think we should have? Here's the deal. If you contribute at the $1,000 level, Andrew and I will fly to where you are, continental U.S., and we will tell you the stories that we can't tell today. How about that?
That's actually good. And to be clear, that's $1,000 per episode. So if you do that for 1 year, then that would be $26,000, and we will fly continental U.S. and Manitoba. We would also Manitoba. Be willing to go to. We're huge in Manitoba, from what I'm told. So we'll fly there and tell you all the stories that we can't. Yeah, that's pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably one rich dude going like, I've never tried to monetize all of the untellable stories, but if you're rich, it's worth more than $26,000. I can tell you that much.
That's for sure.
So we would have to change all of the names, like JD would become Schmady, and Ed would be Ted, and Jeff would be Meph, and
Jeff's just Jeff. We're just going to leave Jeff alone.
No, Jeff would be Jeff with a G instead of with a J.
Geoff.
Yeah.
Why don't we Geoph?
There you go. Now we're thinking. Actually, we've got this all planned out for you already. So, if you're rich, holla. All right. That was really as awkward as I hoped it was going to be. All right. So, without further ado, we're just going to get right into this. So, Lance, why don't you tell us about your first gig with Boston Brass?
My first gig was in, I don't know what year. I don't know. Do you know? 10 years ago. So there you go.
It was in the 70s or 80s, I think.
I remember. I was playing the trombone.
I was. It was at the Elkhart Jazz Festival, which was funny to me because, well, for a lot of reasons. Because I had at that point I had been playing the trombone for 6 months, which is ridiculous, and I am not a jazzer.
It sounded like you had been playing for at least 8.
Oh, come on. You're too kind. I don't improvise, and I play the euphonium. And so I played in as many groups that played in various styles as I could. But to play at a jazz festival was daunting. And then to do it on an instrument that I was largely unfamiliar with was also spectacular. And then it was a half an hour from where I grew up, which was crazy. And then the group that was across from us in this setting at the festival was Ed Shaughnessy from The Tonight Show, who I'd grown up watching. My grandfather was a jazz drummer. So there was it was a strange convergence of things. I remember we played probably, I don't know, 4 sets or something like that.
Yeah, maybe even more. I think that was our last year doing that. Is that right?
It was really,
and it was a little bit lighter because some of the years in the past we had done like 10 sets. I mean, we did like midnight set and all that. I think we did a little less, but it was something 4, 5, 6, something like that.
Well, and actually, there's got a way to tell this part of the story. Well, so I remember it was like not to be nice, I hate to do that, but it was so much fun. It was a real dream come true, and I was just super excited. That was back when I was super excited. Remember that?
I barely remember those days.
I think it was a Tuesday.
That time you got excited.
But well, that was when I came up with the joke. I announced that I had grown up in Niles, Michigan.
This is a good one.
A microphone, and I said that my mom I grew up in Niles, which was, 40 minutes away, and that mom was there celebrating her 80th birthday and got a big round of applause. She had driven to Elkhart, and it was her 80th birthday, and the crowd applauds, and
everyone's looking around at this point trying to see his mom.
I was like, no, she's not here. She hates music, but I'll tell her that you said hi. In fact, I just used that joke again with the tones and tones.
Yes, you did. That's a good one. I like how you're so good at telling jokes and about how you totally just stepped on your own punchline by saying, yeah, and I said that my mom was there, and like, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
And then the other thing that I remember, and I'm trying to figure out a clean way to tell this story. We were, all of the musicians stayed in one hotel, and there was a shuttle that took all the musicians back and forth. And I
don't know why abort.
I'll clean it up, and you and I will find it very, very funny. So we ride in the shuttle with Ed Shaughnessy and this band, all these like super legendary old timers, jazz, and they were talking about Viagra, and we were pretending not to listen or doing our best to pretend to not listen. And
these guys were firmly in the I don't give a crap if these guys in their 30s and 40s are listening to me right now. Yeah, in that
basically
phase
us
of their
now.
career. Yeah.
We beat them to the punch. They were there in their 70s, and we're there now. So the one I have to paraphrase what the one gentleman said. Basically, he couldn't figure out what the merits of what's the benefit to what Viagra does if your wife is like we just got to pull up.
All right, so
let's change the subject.
That's why I was wondering how you were going to clean that up. I was like, that's not really clean up a bull. So,
no,
yeah.
If your wife, looks like his wife looked, apparently. He didn't find her all that attractive at that point.
It was really horrible.
Man.
It was really horrible. Anywho.
Remember before it got weird?
Yeah, I do. A few minutes ago. So that was your the funny thing is that before when the time that we had a trombone opening until we officially hired you, we had you play some of the gigs and Harry Waters played some of the gigs, and ironically, Harry Waters had army responsibilities, and he was not able to make the jazz festival. So we're like, we should put the euphonium players just learn how to play the trombone who doesn't improvise. Let's bring him to a jazz festival for his first ever. That was pretty funny. So, but you hate saying nice things about you, but you did really well. So,
aren't you sweet? I didn't drop the slide.
No, good. You did not drop the slide, which was
so I thought,
a prop bet.
Really, it was a long time until I dropped the slide. I would have put the over-under on that at, certainly by the Elkhart Jazz Festival, and it was a good year and a half or so before I dropped the slide. And I just was shocked that it didn't happen sooner. I don't know what that was about. Certainly not talent.
I actually just made it 2 years and 2 weeks without before my son peed on me.
Oh,
So
that's pretty good.
that was a really good. I shared that on Twitter, and people were like, "You kidding me? I got it like a week and a half in." So, of course, we were we were out and about. We couldn't have happened at home. So
It'd be great if your son was like 16.
He is
better.
He is, yeah. I should say our most recent streak is 2 years and 2 weeks. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so, Andrew, what was the first gig that you played with the Boston Brass?
Well, it's actually a natural segue from getting peed on because no, I'm just kidding.
There's a corollary, right?
My first gig with Boston Brass was in 2000, which is a super round number, so it's easy to remember. At the Colorado Music Educator Conference, I was actually in. I had started playing 2 months beforehand in Dallas Brass and had been gone from. I was in grad school at Arizona State, and I had been gone for the majority of the time from Thanksgiving through like the middle of January, between the holiday and the Y2K fiasco at midnight on the 31st, which didn't end up happening. And I was in the middle of the Everglades actually seeing a hippie band along with 80,000 of my friends. So where if the world had ended, I really wouldn't have cared. So or one could argue noticed. So I was celebrating with my buddies who I hadn't seen in like 7 weeks that I was actually home, and we were just hanging out, and my phone rings at like 9 p.m. and it's Sam Palafian, who was my teacher at the time, and he says I answered, I said hello, and he said, "Hitz, have you unpacked yet?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I just got a call from Boston Brass." He said, "Do you know those guys?" I said, "Nope." And he said, "Well, you're going to fly tomorrow to Colorado to go play with them, etc." I was at the airport at 5 a.m. the next morning, and flew up to the Colorado MEA and played a concert with them. And anyway, the thing that is really memorable about that gig is that this was like a 1 hour MEA gig, and so there's no intermission. So it's a bunch of classical music and then a bunch of the jazz and lighter stuff in the second half. And at that time, the group sang a barbershop quartet, and the bass part was doubled, and they asked me if I was cool with singing, and they were assuming that I wasn't, because, I had just met them, and they threw the whole book at me. I'd never seen any of it before. And I said, yeah, I'm not memorizing a barbershop quartet tune to sing in front of 1,200 people by the concert, but if you write it out, sure. And he said, JD said, "Okay, we'll do it." And then that's when he said, "Rich, write it out." So, because that's the nice thing about having Rich in the band, because you can just make him do that stuff. So anyway, I take a sip of water, and then I put that little clear plastic cup that they have at, in like hotel function rooms. I put it down on my chair, and then when we got done singing, I sat down and completely broke the glass, which was full of water, and and my ass was soaked. Absolutely soaked. And so afterwards, right after that tune, before Caravan, was when JD announced that like none of them had ever met me since the day before, and etc. So a whole bunch of people came up to me in the lobby to talk to me afterwards, and I was standing up against a wall because my ass it looked like I had an accident. So yeah, hence getting peed on, but it wasn't pee. It was actually water. I swear.
You reminded me. This is only peripherally related, but still to this day, one of my favorite things to do is to hassle Jeff Connor. And I did it in a number of ways, and one of my favorite ways for some time to do it was to empty my spit valve onto his shoes.
Trombone, you can get some reach going.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And it was usually, it got to the point where I would just do it in Caravan, which was the closer, in this one particular spot. And it took him a while to remember that it was going to happen, but it just never stopped being funny to me.
And then he would start leaning towards me because you were on his left and he was on my left, and so he would start leaning towards me, and then I would start leaning, like I'd push my bell into his way so that he couldn't get out of the way. And yeah, those were good times. The best times were actually, you need to tell the story about messing with him in the minivan, even though we told it during his episode, because it's a really good one. Actually, I'll tell the story. So we're the whole band is in the same minivan. The five of us. We're on our way to the hall, and Jeff is driving, and I'm shotgun, and Lance is behind Jeff. And Lance leans forward and says, like, not whispering into his ear, just says it, like, pretty close to his ear. He says, now keep in mind that Lance's arms are fully down by his side. Like, he's not going to touch him at all. And yet, when he says to Jeff, hey, man, tell me when you can feel this. Jeff's like, what are you doing? And he's driving 45 miles an hour, and he's freaking out, and he's all tenses up, and he's like swatting at the air, and he's like, and that was one of the hardest that the four of us collectively ever laughed at the same time. Poor Jeff, and he was freaking out. He wouldn't believe us that nothing was up, like for like a good minute and a half, 2 minutes. So
he's just so, he's the reason that the thing is still, well, no pun intended, but that it's still rolling down the road. But it was impossible for me not to make fun of him because he was so uptight about the strangest things.
We almost gave poor Jeff a heart attack in Bangkok, Thailand. We were at a master class, and we played at the beginning, and then we were listening to a student group, and the student group was all female. I think they were high school age, middle school or high school, yeah. And we were so we're in the audience, and the band leader then proceeded to have them all blowing through their horns, for minutes and minutes and minutes, like for 5 full minutes. And he was then addressing the crowd, and he was obviously, he was speaking Thai. He was not speaking English, so we didn't understand a word he was saying. And I have no idea whether he was an outlier or whatever. I didn't really investigate that far, but we finally asked our handler. We said, what is he saying? And it turned out that he was delivering this long misogynist, very misogynist speech to the crowd, saying how women are smaller, or probably saying girls are smaller and inferior, and that they have to warm up their air for minutes and minutes and minutes to just be able to play like boys. And which like that part isn't funny, but it just made it all surreal, and that's what kind of added to the humor, was because these girls who were blowing through their horns, understandably, every once in a while when they were blowing, it would just be like this, like, burp, and there would just be like a quick accidental note that would come out of the horn. And there was 20 of them, or 25 or 30 of these girls on stage. So there's this weird wind noise with this misogynist rant going on. It wasn't rant isn't a good word though, because he was very calm. He was like, he was a super jerk. Yeah, he was just very matter of factly educating everyone on why girls can't play brass instruments very well. But this perp, and so the problem came when we're sitting there for minutes and minutes and minutes, and we're getting bored, but then we find out that he's being misogynist, so then we're like getting pissed and bored, because it's just like, wait, you're wasting our time and everyone's time here to like insult these poor girls, and the ferping is happening, and then Lance, my esteemed colleague at Pedal Note Media, he suddenly says out loud, he says, "Ferp." And JD and I look at him, and we both like go like, oh no, and Jeff looks like, oh, no, do not do that. And then that was when Lance, as soon as he's able to corral himself, he goes burp again, and then JD goes burp, and then the three of us started burping, and Jeff is like gritting his teeth. He's like, stop it, and he's laughing. And so the misogynist speech is going. The girls on stage are burping through their horns. We got three jackass Americans who are burping in the audience, and
we were so excited. They brought us pizzas, Domino's pizzas, and there was like, it was as though you blindfolded yourself and went into the grocery and just randomly picked stuff.
Except you being my 2-year-old. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So there was mayonnaise, and there were some sorts of sea creatures, and may have been an egg in there.
There was Thousand Island dressing on one of them.
Thousand Island. Well,
all things I eat, but not together on one pizza. So, that was a little bit. That was a little bit surreal. And I actually told. I randomly did that to my friend Kristen, to her three children who are now 12 and 10, I think. Twins are 12, and the younger Peter is 10. And at one point over at their house, I'm like crazy Uncle Andrew, and I said "ferp" out of nowhere, and then they went around saying that for like a week around their house. So I'm the "ferp" guy. Anytime they see me, they say "ferp." So I relive that story. She's one of my wife's best friends, so I relive that story over and over and over again. What? Well, yeah, exactly. What other things have gone wrong on international trips? What about?
Well, South Korea is its own chapter. I mean, it's Mr. Kim was our host. Would we go twice, 3 times?
Something like that.
And each time was for a pretty good amount of time, 5-6 days. And Mr. Kim...
They were longer than that, actually.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
I remember the tours were longer, but were we in Korea that...
I think that one of them was... I think one of those trips was just a trip to Korea. I think we did 10 gigs, because we were in like 3 different cities, and we did a whole bunch around... I almost just said Taipei, because my geography is that good. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have been to Taipei, Korea. It's hard to find on a map.
Well, Mr. Kim was the quote-unquote organizer of these tours, and he never failed to surprise us in horrific ways. We had a policy of, if we were flying internationally, we would have the day that we flew, and then we would have a day of rest, and we might rehearse on that day, and then the first scheduled event would be the day after that. And we were assured that this was going to be the case, and so we land.
When you fly to Asia, it takes, especially if you go, we went to Singapore a whole bunch. You get to Singapore, sometimes it's like door to door, like from leaving your house to getting in your hotel room, can be like 32 hours in which you've not played your instrument in a day and a half at least. So, yeah, you need some recovery time for chops and brain and everything else.
You don't know, it's day is night, night is day. You haven't eaten a normal meal, and who knows how long. And so we get off the plane, we go to I can't remember how it sort of just kept unfolding, like, because it's all going through. Mr. Kim spoke English, I guess. So it was, we were getting it straight from Mr. Kim, and there was just going to be one quick thing. We needed to make a stop, and then it turns out we would need our instruments, and that there might be some photographers there, and then, by the time we get to we haven't. I mean, I think we basically just had time to go to the room, drop our stuff off, grab our suits, and then head out. And so we're in this van, and they take us to a television studio.
And we're yelling at Jeff the whole time.
The whole time. It's all Jeff's fault. Everything always Jeff's fault.
Tell me when this hurts your feelings.
That's right. So we end up playing a live, about 1 hour concert for like the equivalent of Austin City Limits in Korea. And we're used to moving, the stage setup. So sometimes the trumpets would be together on one side, and sometimes they'd split up, and we just changed the seating arrangement. Because we were doing this taping, we all had to stay in the same place. So now we haven't slept We're on live television.
And with the tuba bell, it's hard to see to the left, and because the bell is blocking my view, so there are classical tunes where you make sure that whoever was on my right was who was giving, which was usually Jose and Chris, so it made it easy. But yeah, it's just in terms of who gives cues and who can see things, and it's not as simple as swinging around to see the cues because then you're going to bump into the mic. So it was an absolute horror show. Yeah,
and you can find. I
think
yeah,
that's as bad as that group sounded in my 14 years. Understandably, I mean, it was terrible with a live studio audience, and it's like super high production value. It's like, yeah, it's we will not be linking to those in the show notes.
Well, tell that you go next with you pick a Mr. Kim story and then I'll go with another. Couple of other good ones.
Oh, well, there was we were in some town in southern South Korea. I don't even remember. I don't remember what the name of it was, but we made so many jokes in the show about how Jeff loved chicken that that Jeff actually got that Jeff got our host, and nobody was giving it funny looks, so this seemed to be socially okay. Maybe it just was because we were all Americans. I mean, this was a place where there weren't a ton of Americans pulling through, so we were kind of we were a little bit of a show to begin with, and Mr. Kim actually had like 60 chicken wings delivered to Jeff at another restaurant. We're at a restaurant eating Korean barbecue, and then all of a sudden this guy comes in with like what looks like a pizza delivery box, and out he pulls 5 dozen wings for Jeff, and Jeff's like, "What?" Jeff's like, I didn't order this," as if like Jeff would have ordered it, like as he would have just hopped on the phone and ordered some Korean chicken wings. And then Mr. Kim said, a gift for you, and so yeah, that was a little surreal. And then after that was when
did you fall.
I did.
We were sitting on like these rickety plastic chairs.
You can actually see them in oh goodness, what's the name of the crazy famous Korean pop artist? The guy who had the oh man, yeah, there's people screaming at the podcast right now.
Yo-Yo Ma?
Yeah. No. Yes, Yo-Yo Ma is who am I? Gangnam Style. Oh man, don't get old, people. Thank you. One of his videos that you can see these little rickety plastic things, and I was honest to God, I was completely sober, and I just all of a sudden I shifted my weight to reach something, and the plastic twisted underneath me, and I just fell. All of a sudden I'm on the floor of this restaurant with Jeff eating chicken wings above me, and it was all, and that was the restaurant where Chris forgot his phone. He left his phone on the table, and we were walking to go to the next establishment, and Mr. Kim, and Chris was like, "Oh, I forgot my phone," and so Mr. Kim was like, "Okay, well, we're just going, it's just up here and it's on the right," as if it was going to be like pretty self-explanatory. So Chris went back and got his phone, and then he walked out, and it turned out that we walked for like 7 minutes, and there was like a really small turn that we made down an alley, and there's no way that Chris is finding this on his own. So he's just walking around this town, and there's just a guy smoking a cigarette on the sidewalk, and the guy saw Chris, and the guy just pointed. he just pointed. He didn't say anything. He was like, the other jackasses went that way. Yeah. And somehow Chris is back. Yeah, he's married and has a kid now. He made it back from that trip. Yeah, we didn't.
Just imagine him. He walked in. He couldn't have been in there 15 seconds.
No.
And then he turns around, and it's like we teleported to another planet.
We were gone.
And here he's in a town. I don't know the name of the town.
No.
It's 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday or whatever it was, and he's by himself.
Yep, for kids.
You remember that hotel?
Yeah.
I slept. It was one of these things where I kept going back and forth whether it was going to be less disgusting to eat. One thing was a given. I'm keeping all my clothes on, possibly my shoes. And do I get on top of the bed and try to sleep, or do I get in the bed and try and sleep? And it was just, oh, gosh, that was probably the worst hotel.
Oh man.
Well, and then Mr. Kim, my other favorite, Mr. Kim. We're going to play we just had to. I don't remember how long the set was supposed to be, but we were going to leave at say 3:00 because we had to be there for a 7:00 show. Or we were leaving. No, it was like 5 because we had to be there for a 7:00 show.
Yeah, rush hour. Yeah,
also, rush hour turned that into. Well, I think they said it was originally going to be a 7:30 gig, and then it turns out it's a 7:00 gig, and now we're in traffic. And oh, by the way, we have to play this song that's like "My Country 'Tis of Thee" to Koreans. They all know this thing inside and out. We have to play this brand new arrangement that Chris threw together in that afternoon to make this thing happen. And so we're going to sight read it on the show because we don't. I mean,
we were going to read it when we got there.
We were going to read it,
but we got there like 6:53 or something was when we walked in the door for a 7:00 hit,
and we got to change. So now we know we're going to have to walk out on stage and sight read this thing, and then we find out that the event is breast cancer survivors. And it was just like every trip there was the most surreal thing. And thank heavens that Chris had the right tune and the
and
he
tune, nailed it. Yes,
the place went crazy, and it was a really intense, emotional.
It was powerful.
It was really powerful.
Zero warm up.
Man, oh man, the ways that could have gone wrong.
There was barely time to get the suit on. Yeah, it was. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Yeah, good.
It's so little.
He was. Don't you really miss that stuff, Lance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and you started, and this is in Seoul. It's not like there was like a bad accident somewhere. Like the rush hour there is horrendous. That's like trying to drive off of the island of Manhattan at 5:15 and being like, wow, there's traffic on the Lincoln Tunnel. That's so strange. I didn't anticipate all of these people trying to use this tunnel at the same time that I am. Yeah, what a mess.
What a mess.
What a mess indeed. How about should we tell them what we can tell them about Kufstein, Austria, the night that Lance LaDuke almost died?
Almost died. Drank a gallon of beer, which is not a good idea. Children, do not do that. Turns out that it does horrible
He's not
things.
joking. Don't do that.
And I had a heck of a time, as you would, after drinking a gallon of beer. We had an early departure the next day.
Very early.
So let's just say I didn't feel well in the intervening hours between the consumption and the departure time. And I left most of myself in that hotel room. And so I knew that if I laid down that it was all bets were off. And so I packed my stuff up. And we probably were out till 2-3 in the morning. And the next thing, I think it was probably 6:00 or 5:30.
We had to drive to Munich, which was maybe an hour away, just across the river was Germany, and we had like a 5 a.m. departure, I think, from the hotel. So we had like 2 hours to pack and sleep.
Took my horn, took my suitcase down, sat right outside the front door. It was cold too, and because I knew the van would pull up there and they couldn't miss me. And sure enough, the van
was not missable. It was a 1-lane like cobblestone street was the main drag through town.
Oh man, what a brilliant idea this was. So the van pulls up, and the guy, I don't think we exchanged. He looked at I can only imagine how I looked. He pulls up. I open the back. I throw my stuff in. I get in. I shut the door. I lock the door. You guys can do whatever you need to do. I'm fine until we get to the airport.
I felt horrible until I saw Lance, and then I felt better.
This is definitely the stupidest. Well, gosh, I hope it was the stupidest thing I've done.
The stupidest that I've seen you do.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, bad. That was pretty good.
What airport? Right, we
flew from Munich to somewhere else in Germany, and then we had a 2-hour drive once we got there, which also didn't help. That was a big brass festival somewhere too. I just don't even remember where it was.
Schmodling.
No, that wasn't the same trip, but that's a good story.
we got to the airport, and all I wanted to do was sleep or die.
Now, I was going to say that wasn't the only thing you wanted to do.
Fortunately, there was nothing else that was going to happen because that had all happened in that hotel room. So I knew I just needed to be lights out. So these guys all want to go get breakfast, and so they were asking. I'm sitting there.
I said, "Hey, Lance, are you going anywhere?" Meaning, like, can I leave my carry-on with you? And he didn't even turn his head to look at me. He said, "Do I look like I'm going anywhere?" And I said, "No." It was a rather pointed way of saying it's fine.
They were afraid of their stuff getting stolen, so they like tied and attached all of their bags to me. I mean, that was basically like a scarecrow.
Well, that's because you were so out of it. That was the equivalent of just piling it in the corner. Yeah. So like, that was good. And actually, that reminds me of the other Germany story that we have to tell was that we were in. I don't remember the name of this town either. If I saw it on a map, I could identify it. But we were. It was the first stop on a European tour, and that night we went out with the Jupiter rep Rudiger, and went out hanging with him, and we ended up playing a drinking game, which I always found stupid. But this one, there was a point to it, and it was all to mess with Jeff Connor, which meant I was all kinds of on board. So JD introduced this game, which basically involved it involved you said a name, and then the next guy, the guy to your left, would have to say another famous person's name, where the last letter or the first letter of the last name of the previous person had to be the first letter of the first name of the person that you said, and until you could think of it, you had to be drinking beer. Well, Jeff Connor, and so obviously the more you drink, then the harder it is to think of it. So then the more you drink, and
if you say a name that has the same, so like Marilyn Monroe, then it changes directions.
Right, it reverses. So it's like it's like a reverse card in Uno. Yes, this is the key part. So the other key part is that Jeff Connor doesn't like beer. To say that is an understatement. He's repulsed by beer. So all that he drinks are rum and Cokes. So the rest of us are drinking beer. Jeff was drinking hard alcohol, and it was like the first time that he went up to get a refill when it was either JD or Lance said, "Wait a minute," and then like everybody kind of got up and we shuffled our seats such that that Jeff was suddenly in between JD and Lance, who are both freakishly good at this game, and like inappropriately good at this game. So so I'm just sitting over over on the side with Jose, and it would every once in a while come around to us, but Lance and JD kept doing double names, and so it was like a game of ping pong back and forth with Jeff in the middle drinking hard alcohol. And we hurt that poor boy. And
we did hurt him.
He didn't even process like what we were doing.
No,
he didn't figure it out at the beginning, and he certainly wasn't going to figure it out at the end. And we then proceeded after that to go back to the hotel, and we decided that was one of our international drunk Skype parties where we would just Skype. We would just call famous brass players from Europe. And I remember we called Sam. This was obviously before Sam was actually in the band, and Jose and Jeff were both yelling over each other in slurred speech, excited to talk to Sam. And finally, Sam had enough and didn't want to be dealing with them anymore, and so he uttered the famous words, "Put Andrew Hitz on the phone," because he was done with talking to them. And Jeff was like doing breathing exercises in the corner, which was really weird. And so I think Lance called him the Breathing Jeff instead of the Breathing Jim. And I think we called Pat and we called Jens. And
Harry probably.
And Harry. And there was kind of
Rutger was like a man mountain. He was like, he had to be at least as tall as you and weighed at least 100 pounds more.
Yeah.
Probably more like, he had to have been over 300 pounds.
Sweetheart.
Really nice guy, and they gave him. He could not drive a stick shift,
right?
And so we'd had this big van with a trailer attached to it, and Rudiger is like getting the thing started without popping the clutch was always like a big adventure. Like, oh, what's going to happen today? And then we were constantly like he would stall it, and then we were rolling, and sometimes forward and sometimes backward. Rudiger,
and he had a great sense of humor about it too. Yeah, it was. Oh man, yeah, those were good times. Yeah, that left a mark that night. That
that the trip that we played a music store. And
yes,
there was a Q&A afterwards, and we didn't. Jupiter came out with the Pro line of horns, the XOs, and we were all playing XO horns, and Jupiter was just great, and these horns were great, and we were happy to be playing them, and it was just really a great match for the group.
But they had not broken into Germany at all, like in terms
were not about it.
Well,
no.
And this one guy who I'll give you, he's a brass player. I'll give you 3 guesses as to which instrument he played, and the first 2 guesses don't count. That's right. He was a trumpet player who he refused to believe that we were playing Jupiter instruments. Like, he was in front of a room full of 75 people packed into this music store, including kids. He was calling us liars and accusing us of lying to help them sell instruments, because there's no way that anyone could play like we did on Jupiter instruments. And we then were rather emphatic with coming back to him, pointing out that while we did have a business arrangement with them, that they certainly had not paid enough for us to be lying to children about like the quality of instruments. And he then shifted his tactic, and he then said that well, players of your ability level can sound great on anything. It has nothing to do with the instruments. Like, he was just moving the goalposts to wherever he needed them. And we were like, okay. And I still say, I will say this in front of Tabor Stamper, who is the president of KHS America. I said it in front of the powers that be at Con Selma when we were there. I firmly believe that anyone sounds like if you hand Joe Alessi a fully functional but a crappy student model trombone, guess who he sounds like? Joe Alessi. Now, he has to work his tail off to be able to sound like Joe Alessi. A bad instrument makes it hard to do that, but he still sounds like Joe Alessi. So yes, it's the player, but a great horn makes it easy. And this guy then told us, he said, you grab this horn. He was like pointing at horns up on the wall for us to play, because he wanted us to then play the Largo from Dvorak's New World Symphony, an arrangement that we did with the student model instruments up on the wall at this store, which were not Jupiter, just to prove that we could not that it wasn't because the XO instruments were great. And then explained to him that like the music was memorized, and that I can't just on the fly. Rich Kelly could, but I can't on the fly be playing B flat fingerings when a lot of my memorized music is muscle memory, and I can't be transposing, etc. And then he basically accused us of being frauds for refusing to, in the middle of our own master class, take his instructions of playing a two. That was a fun night, man. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah. Well, first he asked us to play some other piece, like something by Handel.
Right.
That's and then right. We're like, well, no.
And everything was from memory that we were doing. Everything. It's not like we had big quintet books in front of us. We didn't have any music stands in front of us.
That was trippy. That was really crazy.
That was a little
instruments, because they didn't believe. They thought we just had somebody stamp the instruments with the brand name on them.
He was he was positive. That reminds me of another German story, which was it might have even been that same trip where we were leaving the country, and it was dark 100 hours, as it frequently is with getting out of the country. And I was at passport control, leaving the EU, and this German guy in Munich, he says, was your trip business or pleasure? And I said a little of both. And as soon as I said that, I thought, you bleeping bleep, because we didn't have work visas. Like, we did not have work visas. So that's like a big freaking no-no. And the guy like stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, I'm sorry. And, like, please keep talking there, sir. And I immediately, knee-jerk reaction, I was pretty impressed with this once it worked. With no hesitation, I said, do you, in German, what's the word for in-laws? And the guy got this huge smile on his face, and he said the word, and he said, I said, where it's pleasure, but it feels like business. And he said, understood, and nodded and stamped my passport with this huge smile and handed me back the passport like with this look on his face, like, I'll pray for you. And I love my mother-in-law. I love my father-in-law. They were still in Virginia Beach where they live, but I used an in-laws joke, which turns out that works in Germany as well, to get out of putting the whole band in hot water. So that was pretty good. So,
that was pretty good.
Yep. Not pretty good to make that mistake in the first place. It was like the 85th time I had left the country, and I was still not thinking very clearly.
That was always the worst. And you just never knew. They could just arbitrarily decide your day was going to get a lot longer.
Yep, that is very, very, very true.
Well, and you had more than your share of how many getting the instrument. See, I had a case built for the euphonium and the trombone. No one is as dumb as me for lots of reasons, but here's a good one. Drag a brass instrument around the planet. Okay, tuba is the worst for sure. Euphonium is no prize, and then throw a trombone in there, and trying to figure that out was a disaster. And so I had a case built that you could take the bell section of the trombone and the euphonium, and it would go underneath, and I would take the trombone slide on the plane with me. But Andrew, it was always a total crapshoot as to what state the case and or instrument would be in by the time we landed.
That is very true. Unless you go with like a great big huge anvil case like any major symphony orchestra is going to be traveling with, but you can't do that when you're in a quintet. You can't. It doesn't fit in any car, any van, that has to be like a big semi truck that's carrying a harp and basses, and guess what? They don't hire that for brass quintets. So, there was a 1 month stretch in, I believe it was the fall of 2010, where I, in an emergency capacity, visited repair shops in Anchorage, Alaska, in Hong Kong, and in Linz, Austria. that was all within the same calendar month. That was really fun. So yeah, that was because you can get a really good tuba case, but if they drop it from the right height or at the right angle, then it doesn't really matter so much. That was really fun.
Baggage handlers there's few people that I esteem less than baggage handlers.
Why don't you tell the people about your stuck trombone at the American Band College?
This was a good one. We have become very good friends and colleagues with the McKees. Max and Scott McKee run American Band College and a thing called WIBIC, which is the Western International Band Conference. I think that's what it stands for. And actually, you've interviewed those guys on The Entrepreneurial Musician, right?
Yes, you should definitely check it out. It's really fascinating, what they've been able to do from a business standpoint, and to hear how Max grew that thing, and then to hear how they've kind of expanded it from there. It's episode 21 of The Entrepreneurial Musician, which we will link to in the show notes.
The American Band College is a program that allows existing band directors to get their master's degree without having to take off of work. So they do. It's personalized, so they work on the stuff that they. Let's say it's a trumpet player. They're not going to spend a lot of time working on trumpet. They're going to work on the areas that need work. And it's it's about over the course of, it's 3 summers, I believe, and then a bunch of work that they do from home. But really, really great program, and it's accredited through Sam Houston State, I think. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they have a big hullabaloo every year, and there's a rotation. And Canadian Brass and Dallas Brass, Boston Brass are in that rotation, and our time was up, and so we were there for this big final concert, and there's about 100 or so band directors on stage playing in this band, and we're playing in front of the band. In fact, they put us like on a riser or something in front of the stage because the stage was like totally crammed out, and the theater is completely packed out, and they're videotaping it, and it's a big deal. And so we were playing Caravan, which we did a lot, and so we get to my solo, and I go to play, and a horrific sound comes out of my horn. I have no idea what is. I mean, I know I'm responsible for that sound, but I don't understand. I've added 2 and 2, and the answer came out like, Portugal. It was just so confusing to me. I tried a second time to make a note, and just this weird dying animal sound came out. And so
he was improvising.
I was. Well, and that was just sort of normal. But this was even worse than my usual improvisation. And so I did what anyone would do in that circumstance. I danced. I did this solid gold dancer routine for the remainder of the 8-bar solo.
It was more of like a Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but it was.
If he was on the wrong meds, that would be.
The place exploded in laughter. Oh man!
As it turns out, the water key. I hit the water key and didn't realize that the cork had come out a little bit, and so the water key didn't seal. But in the moment, I didn't have time to put 2 and 2 together, and there was this whole procedure going on behind me. They instantly got me another trombone. I was able to complete the performance, and it was really funny. Actually, I stole the Victor Borga joke for the second half. We got on the mic, and I said the nice folks at Yamaha have asked me to tell you that my trombone was made by Jupiter.
That was and guess what? For a little recall, that was a little airplane loving. So the airlines, they would just kind of they'd give you. It was wonderful how they would just damage your horns over time. Which I used to get a new
soul.
And your soul. I used to. Yeah, it was nice when being 1K with United and getting upgraded to first class a lot, but that was in exchange for my soul and my mental health. So it wasn't a good trade. I just jumping back overseas, we got to tell the story about the Tang Quartet, who are very old friends of mine. They were teachers at Tanglewood. They were on the faculty of the Boston University Tanglewood Institute, where my family has a summer house right down the street, and so I spent many summers with them, hanging out until the wee hours of the night in the Berkshires, year after year after year, and they're the string quartet in residence at Young Soo Conservatory in Singapore, which I know the band's been back at least once since we left, so that would make 8 trips for the band. So 7 with me there that we've taught at Young Soo all but the very first one. It's an incredible school, but it was always really special to get to see all those guys since I had known them for so many years. And one night on one of the trips, they took all of us on a Mess with the Americans culinary tour of Singapore, and they took us to a hawker center, which is basically like a food court, except food courts are obviously crappy, so it's just the analogy, just like it's laid out like a food court, where there's just like small place, stall after stall after stall, and each stall has like a few dishes. But you can get everything from mutton to stingray to, anything that you can imagine that they eat in Singapore, and they have it there. And they, gave us like pig intestine soup, and Lance and JD and I will eat just about anything. We'll eat just about anything. And so they were bringing us random things, and some of them we really liked, and others they were kind of getting disappointed because we would eat anything, and Jeff won't eat a thing. I don't remember. Chris was no, it wasn't Chris. This was a JD trip.
I think so.
This was, or was it Chris? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It might have been a Chris trip. But
it
anyway.
was JD because it was Halloween.
Yes, it was JD. Yep, for sure. And Jose will eat some things, but so they were getting bummed out that we were eating everything, and so finally they were like, I know what we're going to get them with. And they took us out of the Hawker Center, and they walked a few blocks, and we found a durian fruit stand, which they're easy to find because you can smell them from blocks away. From blocks. You could smell a durian fruit a mile away, like when the mile in between you was a tulip farm. You could still smell the durian fruit. It smells like a stand smells like a large pile of dirty gym socks that have been left to heat up in someone's trunk. Is that a good description?
Yeah, on a hot August day for many, many, many days.
There are signs. There are signs in Singapore on every single taxi cab. There's like a durian fruit, silhouette with like a big, like Ghostbusters slash across it. They are not allowed in hotels. They are not allowed in taxis, and that's because if you put it in the trunk of a taxi for a 10-minute ride and you then take it out, that you will then smell that durian fruit. It will like basically ruin their car. So it's not allowed. So they're thinking like, we'll mess with the Americans here. So we start to eat it, and it's like an avocado in the sense that that there's like a large pit and that you eat the flesh that's around the pit. And I've never experienced anything that had a larger disparity between how it smelled and how it tasted, because it smells like dirty gym socks. It tasted actually sweet and was actually good. The problem is that you'd eat some and then you'd go to get another. You'd in between that piece, you would then go to wipe your nose or something, and you would put your finger near your nose, and you would smell the gym socks, and it was just disgusting. But we actually kind of liked it, which kind of bummed them out a lot. It bummed them out a lot, actually, because they were really trying to just mess with us. And we went to a very small British style pub, and it was Halloween, and we were in a celebratory mood, you could say, because I think we were done with I think we were leaving the next day or something. And it turns out that durian fruit has the same effect on the smell of your urine that asparagus does, except it's times like 15. And so with all of the alcohol that was consumed in that pub, we ended up destroying that bathroom just through urinating. And it got so bad that it actually seeped out of the bathroom and completely dominated the entire smell of the pub. We cleared the place out because it all smelled like durian urine. So,
okay, your hands smelled like it for days.
It was it was something. So
it was
something. So who are you talking to, Duncan?
Might be talking to Mr. Duncan LaDuke.
There you go.
Lance
is suddenly like talking and
actually let's tell one more story because
we're up against it. So
let's tell one quick Duncan story.
Oh, when he sat in with us in Mount Lebanon, or are you talking about the one where I shoved him on stage?
That's what I was talking about.
Save the other one. Yeah, that's a good one. We were playing in Mount Gretna, Pennsylvania, and how old was Duncan? This was 4 years ago.
He was not cool, man. What?
He was 9, I think. So
should we have him tell the story?
We could, yeah, absolutely.
Here,
Duncan, come over here. All right. So Duncan LaDuke is making his Brass Junkies podcast debut. How are you, Duncan?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So what kind of slide lubrication do you use? I don't care. No one cares. All right. Tell the story about when I shoved you on stage in Mount Gretna.
What was that, like third grade?
Somewhere in there.
Something like that.
I think we were at like Hershey or something. And I was looking out onto the stage.
Before the concert.
Before the concert started.
Speaking out, and Andrew shoves me out. And I have this wide-eyed look. I'm back. I say to Andrew, not cool, man.
Except since you were in third grade, it was like, not cool, man, not cool. And you were,
Up to this
you were
person.
pointing in my face, and I laughed so hard that I almost peed, and I think I did pee a little, and your dad was laughing so hard that he almost peed, and then fast forward to like 5 minutes later, and this young man hid like in the closet in my dressing room or something like that, and I then was just in this quiet room, and all of a sudden he jumped out and screamed at me, and he gave me a heart attack. Yeah, it was this high pitched like.
Well, scaring people too, man.
Yeah.
He took a couple years off the end of my life there for a while.
But so he got me back. I said note to self, even though I absolutely loved torturing you because you just looked so bummed out, which I'm a horrible person. So I was like, I ruined this 9-year-old's day, which is awesome. But then I remembered, I was like, I'm going to pick on a different 9-year-old tomorrow because Duncan just got me back like, yeah, good. So because my heart stopped. So. So don't mess with Duncan. He's now also like tall and his voice is deep, and he's scary now. So just cross the street when Duncan's walking towards you.
Say goodbye to the nice people.
Bye, nice people.
That was awesome. There you go. So Duncan LaDuke has made his Brass Junkies debut, and if you haven't listened to the Matt Vaughn episode, which is great from the Philadelphia Orchestra. My son made his Brass Junkies debut, but he's 2, and he was just like crying on the other side of the wall because he wasn't napping. So it was a little less endearing than Duncan's appearance just was. So, well, I think that just about does it. We didn't get to the story about when we were in Wichita and but we're going to backstage.
Oh, yeah.
Backstage 10 minutes before the concert, we're all in our dress and we're holding our horns, and the presenter comes back and he's talking to us, and in the middle of a sentence he farts so loud that it was just like a and then he just kept right on talking. He didn't even acknowledge at all. And I was like, do not look at JD, 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 do not look at I was staring at the floor so hard. And so then if I had to have been the one to speak after he was done saying, so do you guys need anything? I wouldn't have been able to hold it together. But I think it was Jeff who was just clenched, and he was just like, Jeff was like, no, we're good. And then he said, okay, great. We're really looking forward to the show. And then he walked out, and then the door closed, and I exploded. There were tears streaming down my face. I was laughing so hard. So, yeah, man. So we didn't get to that.
Remember to tell the story about when we got to sing with the Tokyo Symphony too.
That will be next time. Yeah, that's actually, we should have let off with that one.
I forgot that one.
That's a surreal one. So, all right.
Thanks for listening. We're trying a bunch of different things. We're going to try and roll out some different types of shows. And if you like this storytelling thing, let us know. If you hated it, let us know that as well. Tell your friends.
Yep. You can email us at pedalnotemedia@gmail.com. You can also hit us up through the website, or we're at Pedal Note Media on Twitter. You can find us a whole lot of places. So, well, thank you so much for listening to our old Boston Brass War Stories here. And that does it for another episode of The Brass Junkies.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Austin Boyer and Buddy Deschler of the Fredericksburg Brass Institute. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.
Whoa!